Recording in
All
progress.
right, everyone. Welcome back to the Lovecraft Easing podcast. Where, if you're watching this later, or if you're listening to the audio version, this doesn't affect you, but we're starting half an hour late today for the live viewers. So thanks for being flexible, Corey. Appreciate it. Corey Farrenkopf is my guest. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's
Kopf.
Farrenkopf. Like you
Just
take your temperature in Fahrenheit, you cough when you're sick, you smush them together.
okay. So Corey Farrenkopf. I got it. Or do I? Did I?
It's all good.
Now I want to teach you how to pronounce Davis. It's it's Dork. So anyway, yeah, Corey is our guest today. I've got Alan Hughes with me today too. I think Matt might be joining us. Pete might be joining us, but we'll see. It's a party either way, right? So, Alan, would you introduce yourself for anybody who might be watching for the first time or listening?
Yeah, sure. Alan Hughes, artist, Patreon, and solo sidekick today.
Oh yeah, I got the mug here, which I've shown people before, but I've got the original black and white that you created. You can't see it, but it's behind me. But I'm going to do a new office tour soon. So, I'm sorry, Alan. This is Joe Pulver welcoming Rick Lay to Carcosa, and let's see here. Alan created that, so and there he is, Matthew Carpenter. Just in time to introduce yourself. Matthew Carpenter. Just in time to introduce yourself.
Yes.
And now I'm echoing in your.
Time to introduce yourself.
And
Yes.
now I'm echoing. You got to turn off the radio when you when you call into the show.
No doubt. Okay, so I have an extra copy of this Right Like Hell anthology, Lovecraft in a Time of Madness.
Yeah.
It's a nice, substantial book. You could win it this week. We usually draw a winner in like about 6 or 8 weeks. So just send an email to easyandprizes@gmail.com and put madness in the subject heading. Who knows? You may win it.
Well, thanks for providing the prize every week, Matt. Appreciate it. And welcome everyone who's watching live. Kim, Mark, Donna. Oh, you email back. I'll get to that. But thank you for the kind gift the other day. There's Pete Rollick.
What? What do you want?
Kim says Pete has entered the building. Now it's a party. I want you to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Pete Rollick. I'm late because I was walking the dog.
Oh, okay. So. Well, I'm late because just a rough day, but I'm late, and now we're here, and now we're gonna party. Corey, do you know these guys? Have you met these guys before?
I have not met them in person, but I saw Pete Rollick do his reading at Necronomicon this year.
Cool.
Ah!
Yeah. I was in the back.
And you don't have to mute. You're the guest, so nice. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Okay. I was doing it in case the random pings happen again, and I'm like, no.
I couldn't even really hear them the first time until I was like really quiet and then listened for it. So I doubt the audience could. So, but thank you. Yeah. So you have a new book called "Living in Cemeteries."
I do.
Yeah. And let me put you on. Hang on a second here. All right. Where'd you go? I'm batting 1,000 today. Okay, hold that book up again, buddy. Please.
All right. This guy.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people have read this book and given you some pretty nice blurbs. I think Laird read it. I don't know where I put my list of. Let's see here. Yeah, talk about what's the book about. Let's start there. And I'm sorry for being a little off today.
No, it's all good, man. It's all no worries. Just thank you for having me on because like this is kind of surreal because I've listened to you all like do this for years and years and years.
Oh, well, really? Thank you. And
Yeah, but
this is how people go crazy, Corey.
it's fine. You gotta lose
It's
sometime, you know?
it's been a lifetime.
Yeah,
And
poor Pete.
this is like some obscure prison of mindscape hell that, I've stumbled into and just can't get out.
If you're lucky, Pete, the afterlife will be this show also for you
Yes,
forever.
this is my afterlife.
Oh God.
If, if,
When I think of living in cemeteries, I think of Peter Beagle's book. Did you ever read A Fine and Private Place?
I haven't read any of his
Oh,
stuff,
I'm
which
gonna write
is
that down.
not great because I like he's one of those people who there's like a hole in my reading history.
It's like Dale's dates all the way from like 1960.
Mhm.
But it's about a guy who gives up on life and lives in a cemetery with a friend who's a raven.
That sounds very much like a thing that I would like.
That sounds really cool.
all right, so not to jump on the bandwagon, but what about Alive in the Necropolis?
I was about to say that.
Dorst.
Is that
Huh?
a
It's a novel. It's set in like town in California. That's nothing but
It's a real town also.
yeah, it's like 95% of the town is cemeteries.
nice?
Does it also make you think of Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book? These are all the
I
things
don't
that
know.
came to me when I was like reading the blurb and everything. I never didn't see it soon enough to buy the book.
Possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's when it got reviewed in where was it, book list that the Graveyard Book was like one of the things that they were talking about. They're like, hey, if you like this, you will probably like this thing. Or it's the Graveyard Book for adults, is what people say. I haven't read the Graveyard Book, so I have no idea.
Well,
Uh,
that's a fun little book. And yeah, I thought of Alive in Necropolis too, Pete.
huh.
But anyway, before we divert you to what we think your book is about
What?
Tell
and
us what
compare
it's
it
about.
to, let's go and have you talk about what your book is actually about.
I can do the thing. Yeah. So Living in Cemeteries,
Hmm.
it is dark fantasy, quiet horror, just kind of like weird between genre stuff. Um, so the kind of spiel is it's set in a world that's slightly different than our own, where everyone's death is predetermined by the sins of their ancestors. So basically, if you're like your uncle was like a giant jerk or whatever, like these spirit dudes are going to show up and kill you very young in a manner similar to the bad thing that that uncle did. But if you have an aunt who's like a really kind, good human being, the spirits will leave you alone. And in this world, wherever you're buried, your ghost comes back and lives in that area. So basically, all the cemeteries around are just like full of ghosts that kind of just like hang out. It's just this big hangout for dead people. Um, and every ghost knows which relative they're like linked to. So people spend their entire life like going around asking all their dead relatives, like, hey, are you the one I have to like suffer for? And ideally, they get to figure that out, but a lot of people don't in this world. And the main character is like a 25-year-old dude who he's a landscaper in the cemetery. So he's one of the guys who like mows the lawn and like resets stones when they break and like tries
Yeah.
to keep the peace for them.
Yeah.
And he's dating this woman who knows she's gonna die at like 85 or something. And one of his close friends knows he's gonna die at 25. So Dave is trying to figure out like, one, how is he gonna die? And two, like, is he gonna live long enough for him to like propose to this girlfriend so that he doesn't like leave her widowed at a very young age? And then hijinks ensues along the way.
Yeah. That's the other part of this. People know when they're gonna die. I mean, without spoilers, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what's a good one to do? Yeah, the first two pages, one of the main characters dies. The his name's Clint, and his like great uncle was a matador, and so there's like a family reunion like during the summer, and everyone's having a great time outside, and all of a sudden these spirits show up with a bull, and everyone's like, oh no, who's gonna pay for Uncle's sins?
Hmm.
And the bull gores Clint, and he dies in front of everyone. And he's like, man, I should have visited Spain so I could have talked to my uncle, so I wouldn't like die in front of everyone. I could have been like in a field alone, and no one would have had to watch that happen. So stuff like that happens. Um, we know that Jessica is going to die at the age of like 85. She's going to get like a love letter from this like forgotten past person in her life, and her heart's going to explode, and she's going to die, and it's going to be peaceful. It's going to be a peaceful heart explosion, right? So, and I should say, like, the spirits are basically these like cloudy beings with different masks on, and everyone, whoever sees them, the mask appears different to them based on like what fear they have.
It's really great world building, man.
I appreciate
Now, do you have a rule? I don't remember, but do you have a rule for how many generations back? Is there like a limit as far as paying for sins?
it doesn't like hardcore state that in there, but there's kind of this thing where as it goes along, once the person who you're connected to, once they die, there's like that kind of rule where like once people stop thinking about you, your ghost disappears. So there's kind of like this generation, this kind of like forward generation thing that gets rid of people's ghosts.
Yeah,
So based on that, like that would probably have to be the thing.
yeah, like
So there's
pretty.
kind of a statute of limitations on
Yeah,
revenge.
yeah, why not? And it's one of the most fun things about this book being out in the world is I do different talks and stuff, and people are like, "Hey, what about this in this world? Is that how this functions?" And I'm like, "I didn't think about that at all. I have no idea, but that sounds great. So sure, why not? It's canon now."
um, I was going to read a couple blurbs. Laird read it, and he writes. In fact, this is the blurb on the cover. The writing seethes and smolders, darkly vibrant and alluring, as an epic contemporary fantasy should be. Farrenkopf is set to wow a few people with living in cemeteries. Laird Barron, author of Not a Speck of Light, which you should pre-order, everybody. And then Paul says, does friendship slash love or ghostly determinism rule the day? The spirits are alive on Cape Cod in Corey Farrenhoff's Living in Cemeteries, a strange, beguiling, ghostly romp that reads as the Wes Anderson novelized Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. I'm here for it. Paul Tremblay. So, yeah, these two guys love the book, everybody. So, yeah, pick it up. It's um, only $6.95 on Kindle, by the way. That's a great price.
All right, so I have a world building question. So, despite what we think, it turns out that large numbers of people actually never move more than 10 miles away from where they've lived, where their families have lived for generations. So, in theory, how far back can you go and talk to your ghosts? And if talking to ghosts is a thing, can we and it's normalized. I mean, that has a huge implication for interpreting history and getting things right or wrong. And I mean, that would be fun to play with.
And also, if you don't mind me before you answer, yeah, it's making me think. So if if the ghosts disappear after everyone who knew them has forgotten them or they died themselves, and then it seems like to me famous people in history, their ghost would still be around. Um, yeah, what do you think of Pete's question
I
and mine?
mean, this is fun.
It is.
You're
It
gonna
is.
you're gonna have to make me put all the things together so that like if I have to write a second book, I'm like, well, Mike Davis said this and Pete Rollick. It has to be how my
I
thing.
mean, it's not a problem. It's just
No?
something interesting to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
So basically like off Pete's question, that was one of the things that I like consciously thought about where people in this world still do terrible things because I it's kind of like a bad, how do I want to phrase it? It's a very negative view of the world, but it's kind of like the way I view the world, where people like know that like if you're gonna be a giant jerk and do like horrible things to people, like the people surrounding you most of the time will be like, oh, I don't want to deal with like that person. That person's like bad, push them from your life. Or if they do things that are illegal, they like go to jail and et cetera, et cetera. Except sometimes they don't, as we all know. Um, but like in my world, like in my brain, I'm like, do like cause the least harm in life, right? Like do the least terrible things, like support people around you, be a good person so that like you're
Absolutely.
living in benefits from that. So like people when they're talking about you, they're like, oh, Corey, that librarian guy, like he was nice and did nice things, as opposed to like, oh, Corey, that librarian guy, like he's a giant jerk and like refuses to give me my books when I go to the library or something,
And
you
he made
know?
me pay the full fee when I returned my book late.
Yeah, we have no fines at the library. So
Really? Wow.
yeah, we're a pretty sweet library system, which is nice. Um, and then with the celebrities, that's one thing I didn't think about like at all with this book, because like I don't think I mentioned a single celebrity in it. But that makes sense, like I don't know. I think in my mind, like the longest period of time for someone's death that's mentioned in it is like from the 1600s, probably.
Hmm.
So I mean, arbitrarily, maybe like 400 years is the max you get to be like in your range of like, is the bad thing coming for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, because some colonial stuff that people pay for.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it, you were joking a little bit, but actually, yeah, Pete's right. It's a very fun concept, very, very fun to play with. And if you do a sequel, you could maybe do a twist on the famous person thing. What do you think, Pete?
Well, okay, so Clara Bow, just pulling something, Clara Bow, silent film actress, right?
Mhm.
I mean, imagine like there's a cemetery caretaker who like every couple of years shows a film festival of Clara Bow movies, just so that he keeps her in everybody's memory, so that she stays alive or alive.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
you could say, Corey? Um, People that remember these dead folks have a head full of ghosts.
They do have a head full of ghosts.
Oh, Jesus.
I love that book though. That's one of my favorite novels.
Anyway, I'm just playing. I'm still spitballing. So,
It's
but
cool.
there's lots of.
Is the caretaker, the person who's taking care of the sound film person, is he doing it because he wants to keep her alive because he like loves her, or is he doing it as like a punishment thing and he's some weird sadistic person?
So it depends on it depends on what he believes the
Yeah.
afterlife is. Right?
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I
I might have
mean,
to figure that out too.
that is so. mm. So there's life, there's afterlife, and then there's whatever comes next.
Took the
And
words right out of my mouth. Yeah, what happens then?
In my
yeah,
emptiness, which is real dark.
yeah.
But yeah, I think in the book, again, that's one of the things I don't touch on, but like in my mind, it's they kind of just like, and then they are gone, and then they evaporate, and then there is no more, no more ghostly existence.
But then what's actually happening is that Clara Bow is cheating on the caretaker because he's aging out
Oh,
and won't be able. So she needs someone to continue the film festivals so that she doesn't get forgotten. I'm just never mind. It's
no,
just
that's great though. That would be wicked cool.
yeah, and
Then
just
it gets back again to the Peter Beagle's book,
yeah.
Private Place. The dead can at least communicate with each other, but they lose more and more as they get more and more decayed. And when they're crumbled into dust, then they're gone, is how it works in his world.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, mine don't really lose their memories. Like they don't really, yeah, they kind of just they come back looking exactly as they were buried. So basically, like however your family dresses you is how you're going to exist for the rest of your ethereal time on Earth.
Oh my God, this would be a great way to get revenge on relatives you don't like.
What
Yeah,
about
right?
cremation?
Um, yeah, they
Corey's like, damn you guys. Stop
Well,
it.
no, I have a character who gets cremated and she comes back wearing the clothes that she was cremated in.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I have to be like, yeah, that's exactly it. Oh God. Yeah, I've got a short story that I've been trying to place that deals with like cremation and ghosts, and it's very, very bleak and very dark. And it is not the same as the novel is. So
I was about to ask for future stories and novels and so forth for you. Are, are you going to have a connected universe with everything or not necessarily? Hey, DeBronzo.
um so yeah, I I wrote a sequel to Living in Cemeteries like a number of years ago. I should also say like I wrote Living in Cemeteries like 12 years ago or something. Like when I was 23 when I graduated college, that's like what I wrote over the course of a summer.
I didn't
And
realize that. But
yeah, yeah, no,
it
I
came
wrote
out
it.
in April, right?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It has a very very crazy publication life and story to how it eventually became what it is now. But yeah, so I wrote it forever ago, and if I do sequels and stuff, it'll be a connected world, but mo none of my short stories take place there. None of my other novels take place in it. Um,
But you said you have a
You've
short
got all
story
kinds of
sequel.
time. Why don't you tell us how it did get into publication things? That's a
yeah.
long time to sit on the shelf.
Yeah.
No, that'd be yeah, it's cool. It's weird. It's a good story because like I like being transparent about publication and stuff because like younger me had no idea like the process or anything, and now older me's like, and now I've done the thing, so like maybe it'll help someone else along the way.
I've got a
But
little story about that when you're done.
yeah.
So,
So yeah, so when I was in college during the summers, I'd come home and I would mow cemeteries, right? So like the things that Dave does is like what I do. Dave's the main character, if people listening don't know. Um, so senior or the year between when I went to grad school and when I graduated, uh, I would go and mow the cemeteries, and I would come home and sit down and write for an hour or two at my parents' house. And over the course of 3 months, I wrote the book, went to grad school, edited the book. Um, and then my partner at the time ended up reading through it and doing like a bunch of beta reading and helping me workshop it and all sorts of stuff. And she was a very harsh critic on it and made it a lot better, thank God. Um, and so did that and then eventually like queried for it. Didn't know how to write a query letter, so got a lot of rejections, which was not fun, but everyone does it. And then I did a query letter writing workshop with Publishers Weekly, I think. It was like $100 or something. I was like, oh, that would probably help. This would be good. And then I wrote a much better query letter, and they did like this editing thing, sent it out, and I had like 30 requests for full manuscripts after that. And I was like,
that's awesome, Corey.
victory, it's gonna be crazy. And like that was over the course of like a year. And I eventually like signed with my agent Marie Lamba, who's wonderful. Um, and then she and I went through probably 6 months of edits, maybe more. And I should also say, like my partner at the time, we also did another round or two of edits. I did another round or two of edits. So it was like kind of this endless process, which is what you do, you know. Um, so then my agent sent it out, and it went to every, I would say like every major house, and it got rejected across the board. And I was like, no, my dreams, they're gone. And I got good feedback from a lot of them. A lot of them said it was too genre to be literary and then too literary to be genre. And so I was like, okay, I don't know how I how I'll fix that. So it got rejected, and that was a bummer. And then my agent was like, "Oh, you should like rewrite it and see if you can address those comments." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So we did that, and then we sent it out to a few more places that hadn't seen it. They rejected it, and I was like, "Oh no!" So we shelved it, and then we went on submission with another novel of mine that's like still out and about doing its thing. And then like 3 years went by, and my agent was like, "Hey, the literary landscape has changed, and right now a lot of acquiring editors are more cool with like you calling horror, right? Because when this was first going around, this was before I think it was a little bit before like the boom that we always talk about in
Hmm.
horror. So people were like, "Oh no, it's not horror. That's a thriller," or "Oh, that's like some kind of weird fantasy novel or something." And so my agent was like, "Hey, now people are calling horror, so let's put it back out." And it went back out, and a number of publishing houses liked it, and we sold it to Journalstone. So Yeah, it was a very long process, and I'm very happy with the results and stuff. And yeah, if you told younger me like how long the process was, like I don't know what he would have done, but I think it's good that people know to not give up on their dreams for a 10-year publication of your debut novel.
There's so much in life that you can make mistakes and so forth that, when you're working towards goals and everything, as long as you learn from them and most importantly, what you just said, to not give up. Persistence is probably the number one thing that you need, no matter what your goal is.
Yeah.
I want to tell you this little mini story in a second, but before I do that, what would you? Because writers and beginning writers listen to this show too. So, what would be just like a short recipe if younger you said, "Okay, Corey, what do I do, and what order do I do it in?" And I realize that the process is different for other people. Some people self-publish, and some people go a different route. But what would you have told, younger Corey as far as how it worked for you?
That's a good
Don't
question.
do it.
Sorry.
Don't do it.
Uh,
Just that.
no, it's writing's like the thing that I love doing, and it's the thing I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know what I would do if I didn't write. I'd be a very different person. Life would be very different. Um, what would I tell younger me? There's part of me that like my go-to advice. I run a lot of like writing workshops around here. I do a lot of writing seminar kind of stuff at the library. And the thing I tell most people who are just starting out, if they're like trying to make a serious go of it, they want to get published, and that's what they're trying to do. Because like I teach a lot of people who just like want to write for fun, or they write for their significant other or something, or they have a very specific like
Sure.
more chill way of writing.
Right.
And for them, I'm like, do whatever you want, just like have fun, and it's great. If someone's seriously pursuing publication, one of the things that would have been great for younger me is if I took the advice that a lot of other writers give of read the places you want to submit, figure out like where your work fits in the literary landscape, and
Hmm.
like write short stories for a while because I have a number of like trunk novels that like are never going to see the light of day, and they were like fun to write and stuff, and I got a lot better at writing because I wrote a giant amount of trash. And um, but it would have been better if that giant amount of trash was short stories as opposed to a 90,000 word novel, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my early attempts at novels, like, would have been like okay as a short story or whatever, and I could have got it out of my system as opposed to being like, I need to write like a 140,000 word dark superhero novel, which I'm just like, oh no, that's gonna live in my hard drive forever. Um, so that I would say, because I've always read pretty broadly, which is good, and I know that's like a common one given to people. Um,
As far as the concreteness of it, so step one would be that you know who you're submitting to,
oh yeah,
is what
yeah,
you were
yeah.
saying. But then step two would be what? The query letter, learning how to do that properly.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like I shot myself in the foot pretty I had a before this novel, I had another novel that I queried for, but I had no idea how to write a query letter, and query letters like are literally a 4 point thing. Like you have to do this in paragraph 1, this in paragraph 2, this in paragraph 3, this in paragraph 4. And a lot of agents right now, like if you don't do that, they're just gonna pass it because they get thousands of submissions every year, you know?
Right.
And it's one of those things like in these very established like literary ways, you don't want to be the person who like you're like, I'm going to be edgy, I'm going to write this really weird thing and it's going to be all over the place, and an agent's going to be like, I have no time in my day, so you are right to the trash. So yeah, it's I think things like that are important to know just because like you don't want to like screw yourself over from like the get-go. Like you could have written the best book ever, but if you don't know how to like present yourself and how to show the people who possibly will invest in your book what it is, you just will never have your chance, which is sad.
Yeah. But that's great advice, though. Um, you've stumbled along the way and learned the lessons the hard way, and it's something to be able to pass those lessons off to other people so they don't have to, you know, trip and fall in those ways. Um,
Oh, the one other thing I would really tell younger me is, the submission grinder, Do you guys use submission grinder for subs and stuff?
Uh, I haven't been taking publications for a while, but no, I don't even know what that is.
So submission grinder is basically the guy who runs Diabolical Plots, the literary magazine, has this like submission aggregator where it's all user data where you go in and you say like I submitted to this magazine on this date, and it kind of tracks that stuff. And every magazine, most anthologies, it basically has all their data populated with like submission time frames, the amount of money they pay, what genres they take, the usual like the speed of a rejection, the speed of an acceptance, how much is personal, do they take simultaneous subs, do they only take solo subs? So if you write like a 4,500 word zombie story, right? You can go in and be like, I have a 4,500 word horror story. I want to find a market that pays 3 cents and up. I want to find a market that takes simultaneous submissions. So you click all those things and it'll tell
Right,
you the open places for that.
right, okay.
And when I was younger, I just kind of mystically stumbled from place to place, being like, oh, I've discovered this new thing. Great. And God, I could have saved so much time and would have been like much more knowledgeable if I had known like a website like that exists.
Yeah. What do you think, Pete? Have you used that? Or
So back in the Stone Age, when I started submitting in the 90s, we barely had internet, let alone any of the neat tools that people put out there for free.
mhm,
But what you're describing is everybody sort of like there were people who did that at the time. It wasn't quite as organized, but that sounds like a great tool for writers.
Yeah.
Um, I don't do that anymore because honestly, I don't have to go hunting for a place to put stories anymore. People usually come to me or I get notified and see if they want a story. But no, it's a great idea. I wish there was something on the other end that would keep track of who I submitted to. Did they respond? Did I get paid?
yeah, because you've
When do
talked
I
about
get
that
to?
before. What a
Yeah,
how hard that can be, and there's got to be some tool out there
it's called Excel.
that
And
there's some money waiting to happen there if somebody created an app for this.
yeah, the problem is that you the writer or whoever's handling, and this is why people get agents and assistants, is because the business of being a writer is a whole separate business than actually writing.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me a little bit of Ellen Datlow, except from the other end. She has multiple databases so that she can track who has been paid, and
Yeah.
when royalty checks come in, how is she supposed to distribute them, because she's got so many books out there. There's just no way she can keep track. So I know she does that via database.
She
Yeah.
and I were talking the other day, because she was here, and she was telling us that there are some authors who are getting royalty checks from years to decades ago, and they've just set it up so that they just go straight to a charity because it's not worth
Yeah.
dealing with the amount. So,
Um, well, Corey, I was talking to Laird on the phone earlier today,
Mhm.
and he asked, so who's going to be on your podcast today? And I told him, and had nice things to say about you. And he talked about also you showing him around in this library that you used to work
That
at. He said it was really, really old.
is.
And I want to talk about the library for in a second, but he said, and also, Corey was asking about, the process and everything, and learning at that point and everything. So it's really nice to see his book out there, so he sounded pretty proud of you. So,
Yeah.
but
Larry.
but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you can finish.
No, that's pretty much it. But then he started talking about this library that that you showed him, and I don't remember who he said else was with him.
It was John.
John, was it John? Yeah, figures. But there was there's like a one of the things was like a telephone in the basement or something that wasn't hooked up to something and occasionally rang. I'll let you tell all this.
I can
It's
tell you
pretty
all the
cool.
ghosts, but yeah, first, like Laird has been extremely kind to me throughout my career. He's like always been there for me when I need advice on like publishing, like where should I go, what should I do? Like Laird's just extremely kind, and I've always appreciated his help with everything.
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah, and like before, Laird's great. Before the pandemic, he and John came and we did a talk at my library, and we did like discussions on short stories, horror, and dark fantasy, and kind of like had a back and forth conversation and did a book signing. And
Hmm.
they drove up from New York and stayed above my garage in this little like guest apartment thing that I have up there, and it was great. It was really fun. Um, but yeah, so I used to be the assistant director of Sturgis Library, which is in Barnstable Village, which is on Cape Cod. And it's the oldest building in America housing a library. So
Wow.
the original building, like the front part of it, was built in 1644 for Reverend John Lothrop, who was like the first Reverend or second Reverend of Barnstable. There's like people who will like fight over historical accuracies on this, and like like the original Reverend got like excommunicated because he was doing stuff they didn't like, and I don't know, it doesn't matter. Um, so yeah, the building is wicked old, and they built it and it expanded as everything does around here. So it's wicked haunted. I would encounter ghost stuff all the time. It kind of got to the point where it would happen and it wouldn't phase you anymore. You would just be like, "Oh, that's the ghost." Because like if I was freaking out every time, like every other week, I'd have some like horrible thing and I would lose my mind. Uh, but yeah, so lots of stories. Where to start? So a lot of the very boring things would happen where like it would touch you, or you'd hear footsteps, or you'd have like someone adjusting your collar, you'd have like a hand on your back, that sort of thing. And I had a bunch of coworkers, like my buddy Jack, Jack Sheedy. He does a lot of local history writing and writes some like stuff on like dark history on Cape Cod and stuff. But he doesn't believe in ghosts, and the ghosts like to touch him a lot. So he would always feel like caller and no one would be there. And I'm like, so Jack, what do you think that is? And he's like, I don't know, man. um, so like you would get those basic kind of things, but the old section of the library, the second floor would have been where so back in the day, librarians didn't get paid a whole lot, kind of like contemporary times also. But back in the day, the librarian often got to live in the library. So the second floor was the librarian's apartment. And that contemporarily is where the break room is for Sturgis. So I would sit in there on my lunch break for an hour every day, and I'd be writing. And that's where I wrote a lot of my books. That's where I edited some of Living in Cemeteries. But there was a door on the third floor, which is this like super creepy, super creepy place. Um, but it recently gotten weatherproofed. Like the state had sent someone in and like did everything to like fix our energy efficiency. And so you could like rattle this door and like shake it back and forth and it would not pop open. And I'd be sitting writing on my lunch break and you'd hear the door upstairs go click and the lock would open
Oh,
and it would just
jeez.
and I would just keep on writing because I was like, I have a half an hour. I'm gonna go close that when I'm done. And so I'd have to go upstairs and close that, which it wasn't that big of an issue.
What was the deal
Then
with the phone?
the phone's one of the later ones because that's one of the cool ones. Let me give you some of the more basic ones, then I'll
Sure.
give you the phone one's weird. But like the lights in the attic would turn themselves on. Like you'd go and you'd leave on one of the like the winter nights and you'd look up and you'd be like, oh great, because the building looks kind of like the Amityville horror house from the side. So it'd have the windows aglow in the top, and you're like, I have to go back and shut those off. Great. And you go back and do it. Um, we would come back to work after like a day off or whatever, and there'd be books arranged around the library in like weird shapes and stuff, or like open to pages. And they wouldn't have been. We checked the library before you close, and if there was books on the floor, you'd pick them up. Like one time, there was some that were kind of arranged in almost like a star pattern or something, and we are like, "Well, that's odd." Um, like the bookshelves would also move sometimes, so you'd be like walking around or sitting, and the bookshelves would just like shake back and forth. That was kind of strange.
I'm
Like,
picturing the New York Public Library from a movie I like. I don't know if you guys know.
it's very similar to that kind of thing.
Hello,
Um,
I'm Peter. Where are you from originally?
yeah, but so like the big stories that are the weird ones though are like the phone call. So all the phones in the building were hooked up together. So like if the director would call you, it would be like the director is calling. You would show on this little screen.
Hmm.
Or if the circulation desk was calling you, it would say circ. Um, if the basement was calling you, it would say basement. But the phone in the basement didn't work and it couldn't call out to you, but it called out to you. So every once in a while I get a phone call and it would say basement and I'd pick up the phone and it would just be like on the other end. And I was like, that's spooky. And then I'd go downstairs to make sure the phone could not possibly be working and it would not be working. And I'd be like, okay, that's good. Um,
Did the
then
cops ever call and say to you, Corey, the phone call is coming from inside the library?
dude, no, but they could have. That was a weird
Sorry, too
one.
many dad jokes today.
No, dude, it's good. I've got the two finale. I've told these stories so many times that I have like an order that I have to tell them in, or else I forget stuff. The last two, I used to every Tuesday night close with the same person. Her name's Lisa. She's a wonderful person, and we would like play jokes on each other. Where like you have to check the bathrooms, right, to make sure no one's trying to hide out in the bathroom to live in the library after we're closed. And so she'd go in there, and I'd be like, "Excuse me, miss, I'm in here. Please get away." And like, oh no. So one night she's like, "Oh, Corey, don't do that spooky thing again or whatever." And I was at the other end of the library and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Corey, did you just say something?" And I like kind of scurried over to be like, "What's going on?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, some person, like a little girl sounding person was like, 'Excuse me, miss, can you help me?'" I was like, "Yeah, that wasn't me. That was not this guy." So
Wow,
that was
Corey.
strange. And then the last one like isn't as big of a story, but like I used to run creative writing classes after hours, so I'd be there shutting down by myself, and I'd go to shut the lights off or whatever. And one of the nights I went to shut the lights off, and then all of a sudden something slapped the desk in front of me with like two palms, like really loud, and I was like, okay, that the ghost is angry today. I need to leave. And that was like the only time that like the ghosts have made me feel like, oh, this isn't great. Like most of the other times you could just kind of like overlook it and it'd be like a strange part of your day, but that time I was like, that is aggressive. Um, and those are all my Sturgis Library ghost stories.
Well, I don't know if you saw, but Alan wrote, it's a great idea that you should be on our next year's Halloween show. So,
Sure. I've also got I encountered a ghost in the cemetery that I wrote about in this, so I could always tell that one later if you want.
absolutely. I, I, what are
Well,
your thoughts?
actually,
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
um, maybe we get to know you a little bit, or tell the viewers out there, like, how did you get into writing? Because it sounds like you're writing a novel like in your 20s. That's a pretty big project coming right out of school. I was just wondering, have you always been writing, and are you professionally teaching writing now, or are you a full-time writer? What's going on?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a full-time librarian right now. That's my day job. So that is what pays the majority of the bills. I do some mentoring through a local arts collective called the Core July. So I do mentor for that. I run weekly writing groups at the library. I run sci-fi fantasy book groups at the library. I run short story groups at the library. So I do a lot of that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I probably write a novel a year, probably like 10 to 20 short stories, maybe. And most of them get published.
That's pretty productive, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's convenient. It's nice that it works out that way, and it's just like I don't know how to not do it, and that's
So, what was your training in writing? Was it just from the get-go, like you're writing in sixth grade and just kept on, or is it like you try model after certain writers?
so yeah. So when I was young, I went to Catholic school for K through 8 or whatever, and I used to just crank through epic fantasy novels, mostly like D&D novels, Forgotten Realms novels, Magic the Gathering novels. So I was all about just like dragons and elves and stuff like that. And then in seventh grade, our teacher was like, we're going to write short stories. We're going to write short stories and it's going to be a great time. And so here's your assignment. And I always loved telling stories and I read voraciously as a kid. I also read very slowly, I should say. Like I used to have to go to extra help with the nuns for my reading because I was like a slow reader. um, thanks to those nuns. Great stuff. But yeah, so we were supposed to write a short story. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a novel. And I have one of those black composition books, and I'm writing a very graphic, epic fantasy novel like all the stuff I was reading. Um, and so, like, the night came where we're supposed to read. So everyone's parents are there in the classroom. There's like nuns in the back of the room, the teachers at the front of the room, and everyone's reading their stories. And some kids read ones about like making cupcakes with grandma, or someone else wrote one about like being a ballerina. My best friend Mark wrote this story. He didn't write this story, but he basically copied the synopsis of a Stephen King novel and read it. And everyone was like, wow, Mark is an amazing writer. That's crazy. And this was back before like the internet was a big thing. So no one ever like Googled it. And Mark's like, yeah, I'm great. I am excellent.
Mark's like,
Uh,
I have to agree with you.
yeah, no, and it was hilarious. So he did that. And then I go up, and the beginning of my novel was, or I wrote like 50 pages of this thing or whatever. But the beginning was like, and then the elf climbed the tree and notched his arrow and let fly. And he said, die, you dirty cur, to some goblin. And then the arrow plunged through the goblin's skull, splattering the nearby trees with brain matter and gore and
That's great.
just went on and on and on. And like I'm up in front of the room for like 15 minutes where everyone else was up there for like 2 minutes. And at some point I like look down from my book that's been in front of my face, and everyone's staring at me like I'm Satan. And I'm like, oh no, everyone thinks I'm crazy. This is bad. And I'm also a very anxious person. So young Corey was having a rough go with that. And I was just like, oh, and then a dragon showed up and killed everyone. And then I ran away. And then I stopped writing from that point until I was in high school, like late high school, which is really sad because like I loved writing. But I wrote in high school, and then in college, uh, I got a minor in creative writing. I did a capstone class with John Hennessy. He was like a
Oh,
great. I wrote a novel in college as my capstone, and then after college, I just kept writing. Like I write. I have like an hour of unpaid lunch every day, and during that, I write for a half an hour to 45 minutes. So every day I do that. Every day I wake up at 5:45 and write for a half an hour and do yoga. So I have a half an hour chunk there. Some nights I get an extra hour. Some weekends I get 3 hours. So I'm just like picking away, like all the free time. I'm like, can I get half an hour here, half an hour there? And I read a ton. I've been a reader for a number of different literary magazines. I'm the fiction editor for the Cape Cod Poetry Review, which is a very small regional magazine my buddy runs with a few of us. Yeah, so I do a lot.
Did you say you have a short story that's kind of a sequel to the Living in Cemeteries novel?
No, I was saying that I have a short story that deals with um, ghosts coming back after cremation.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, I've thought about doing short stories in the universe, but I just haven't gotten to them. Like I wrote a sequel a number of years ago, but like it was back before I knew how to write, and I'm like, to make this thing a functional novel that could like stand on its own and I would be proud of it would be a lot. So I'd have to like go back from phase one to or stage one to make a good sequel if I was ever going to do that.
What have you read lately
Well,
that you really enjoyed?
Ooh, what have I read lately? So I'm a big Nathan Ballingard fan. So Crypt of the Moon Spider, that was great.
Oh, yeah, he was on a couple of months ago. That was a fun conversation. It's such a good book.
I listened to it and it was wonderful. I actually reached out to him for a blurb for this guy, and he wasn't able to get it in time. But on the day it came out, he made this really wonderful like Twitter, like a couple of comments on it, and just write this amazingly beautiful thing and being like, oh, and he really liked it and stuff. And that was like maybe the highlight of the day that it came out, honestly, because like I've looked up to him for years. He was he was like one of the writers I randomly discovered at the library in Northampton. And I was like, North American Lake Monsters, this is a cool title. And I just read it, and didn't know any connection to him or anything at the time. But he's
He's
great.
a great writer and a great guy.
Yeah. What else have I read lately? I'm reading Kelly Link's Book of Love right now. I'm really enjoying that. I'm a huge Kelly Link fan. Like her collection, Black Cat, White Dog, is like one of my favorites. Um, what else have I read lately? I meant to write things down. I should have written things down. Oh, I just finished AC Wise's Grackle. That's like one of her new novellas that was published by PS Publishing. So like it's like out in England or whatever, so you have to pay a bunch to get it imported. But that was like a really cool like dark academia folklore. This woman studying folklore in college like goes to this weird place where there's um like a local witch story, but there's also like an abandoned amusement park, and it's just like beautiful. So I really
The
like her.
it sounds really um the title sounds really familiar, but I can't place it. I don't think I've read the book.
Oh, it's so good. And it's just a novella. It's like a quick read. It's like 100 pages or something. So it's like perfect length for what it is. And I love her collection, the ghost sequences. I think it's the ghost sequences. There's the ghost variations. I think it's the ghost sequences. Like she's so good. Um,
What's coming up from you sometime in the future? What, like, next novel, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I've got a short story collection coming out in February on the 14th. It's called Haunted Ecologies. It's all ecological horror. That's coming out with Journalstone
The 14th
um,
of this month?
of February.
February, you said. I'm sorry, you did say that. Okay.
It's all and it's on Valentine's Day. It's the perfect day for ecological horror. Um, so I have that. I have a novelette coming out with Cursed Morsels and like a split thing that's also ecological horror. Um, I'm wrapping up two novels right now, and so my agent will basically probably decide on one of them, and that'll be the next thing we submit out. I have a story coming out in. I've got one in Flash Fiction Online at some point. I've got one in the next Chthonic Matter. I've got I've got one in Patrick Barb's what's it called? The Neutral Milk Hotel anthology.
Oh, okay.
Something in there.
Be sure
Um,
to reach out to me when, for example, this collection is available for pre-order and
yeah,
so
yeah,
forth,
yeah.
so I can help you put the word out.
Yeah, I would love that. They usually do pre-orders like a month before it comes out. Like Journal Stone has kind of like this process, and that's how they do it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what that is. It's on Goodreads right now, and that's kind of its only online proof that it's like a thing, and I'm not just like lying about it. So
I believed you, even without the proof. So, guys, any other questions for Corey?
Corey, do you know of the writer Al Goenback?
I've heard the name, and I know he won a Stoker a couple years ago.
Yes. He
But
is actually a cemetery caretaker.
really,
Yeah, for one of the municipalities in the Orlando area.
really, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, so if you get a chance to sit down with him, he's got some great stories.
That's cool.
Um,
Did you write about it?
no,
That's
he does write horror. I don't know that he's ever incorporated anything from the cemeteries into his stuff.
gotcha.
But
Hmm.
yeah, he's got some great stories to tell.
Anyone else? Hey, Mike DeBronzo, welcome.
So
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I was wondering, Corey, who would you think are your biggest influences?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I kind of like I like to think I sit between. Actually, that's not even a good analogy. So yeah, the people who I love, I really love Kelly Link. Really love Karen Russell. Um, I mean, Laird Barron has always been a huge influence. John Langan stuff, Paul Tremblay stuff. I love Jeff Vandermeer. I was saying like AC Wise, her stuff's amazing. Kay Chronister, I really like what she's doing these days. Sarah Pinsker, I love what she's doing. Um, and also did I say Jeff Vandermeer already? He was a
Hmm.
really big influence on me. Like there was a time in my life where like now I'm a librarian, so I read the reviews of like every book that comes out. So there's like no surprising books anymore, which is like really sad. I can't like wander into a library and look at the new bookshelf and be like, "Oh, I didn't know this existed," because I know most things exist, which is kind of a sad place to be. But like back in the day when I didn't, I used to just like wander through libraries and just pick random things off shelves, right? So I
Great.
like That's how I found Nathan Ballingred. And Nathan Ballingred is also like one of my biggest influences. Like his collection Wounds is one of my like go-to recs for like everyone. Um, but yeah, so there was a time where I was a just starting out in libraries, working at Harwich, their public library over here, and I found A Head Full of Ghosts, and I was like, "That's a cool title. I'm gonna read that."
It is.
I picked that up and read it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is like life changing for me in certain ways," because I had mostly been writing like literary fiction with dark elements in it till that point. And so I read that and I was like, ooh, this is close to the thing I want to do. Like I could live in this world. And then I also found Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer at the same time. And I was like, this is a sweet cover. And so I was like, okay, cool. And then that one changed my world also. So I read both of those like back to back. And I've been reading like Karen Russell and Kelly Link. So my original stuff is kind of in that world. And then I read their two things. And now I like to think that I sit somewhere between those two camps, if that makes sense.
Yeah. A librarian seems like a perfect job for a writer.
Yeah, it's cool. Sometimes it's overwhelming and sometimes it makes you a little sad because you're like, you can see how many times certain books check out. And if it's a book you love and you're like, ooh, this has been checked out twice. And then you see another book that you're like, this book's hot trash. And it's been checked out 300 times or something insane. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. That's makes me feel good about what I do. All right.
You're like, if this guy can get published, I'll be fine, you know.
Yeah.
But
Right.
there's also this factor in that of watching a book you love and take care of slowly decay through use.
Yes. But that's great though. Like I love
Yeah.
it. It's when you've seen a book, it's got like 40 checkouts, it's all stained and stuff. And you're like, this is
Yeah.
beloved. It's great. And then you retire it and you buy another copy of it to keep it alive. But on
Hopefully.
Todd, one of our big issues is people bring them all to the beach. So we
Yeah.
get the books back and they're full of sand. So you get these like maraca books that you shake and it's just like
That's great.
and you get to a point where you learn how to get the sand out where you put a little slit in the bottom and you kind of like funnel it out and
You
There-
crazy librarians and your stories.
yeah, right.
I used to spend my summers in Ocean City, Maryland,
Mhm.
and they had a lending library like 2 blocks from the beach because they're only like 4 blocks wide, and they had no hardcover books in the library. It's all paperbacks,
This is why.
and it just dawns on me that this is why.
Yeah.
It's all beach reads,
Mhm.
and that means something completely different than, yeah. Okay, now I understand something from my childhood.
Yeah.
That's why we did this, Pete.
I know this was an intervention.
That's one less session you have to pay for now.
For me or for the rest of the family?
For us.
Well,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, Corey, thanks for being here. Guys, the book is Living in Cemeteries by Corey Farrenkopf. And it's on Kindle. It's available in print. And I think that's a great Kindle price, by the way. It's only $6.95. Is there anything that I forgot to ask that maybe you want to talk about, Corey?
For example, do you have any other media projects like inquiries? Like, does your agent like shop it to like Hollywood, as it were?
That's a good
Yeah.
question, Matt.
Yeah. So I haven't had we haven't any Hollywood interest reach out on Living in Cemeteries yet. If anyone's listening and wants it, it's still available. But I get every so often we get inquiries for like my short stories and stuff. And that's kind of the Hollywood thing where people are like, "Oh, this is great. Yeah, 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 yeah." And then you don't hear back from them after a while. So like my short stories get inquiries and stuff. And it would be great. And it would be cool to see some of my stuff made, and who wouldn't love a little extra money,
Living in
Um,
Cemeteries seems like it would be a great, miniseries, streamed
That would
miniseries.
be cool. God,
Yeah.
I would cry. It would be wonderful. But yeah, like for projects, like I said, I'm juggling 2 novels right now. I've got another short story collection that's fully done. I've got this novella that's done that I have to like do a little bit of polishing on. I have another I have like another eco horror novel that's got to probably go back out on submission. I don't really work much outside of writing. Like I don't have a lot of other creative outlets outside of writing. Like I play music and stuff, but I'm not like seriously doing anything with it. I always wish I could draw or paint, but like I'm terrible at making physical art, so there's no like none of that happening. Yeah.
Well, like I said, thanks for being here. We're gonna talk about a few other things for the next few minutes, and you're welcome to stick around if you want, or if you got to go, that's fine too. What are you shaking your head at, Pete?
I'm just warning him off.
Oh, okay, right.
He's given an opportunity to leave hell. He should take it.
I'm gonna stick around though, because like I
That's
said,
Of
yeah.
course you are.
that's a
So,
little strong. I mean, purgatory maybe, but
okay, limbo,
yeah.
purgatory.
So, Mike, can I talk a little bit about movie night last night?
No.
Oh, well, I'm talking anyway. We had actually a really good movie night last night. You know, Chaz Mina, sometime panelist,
Patreon
sometime wasn't Patreon.
Great
Yeah,
guy,
friend.
great guy.
he told me about he had a part in a short movie, a half-hour long movie based on the Stephen King story, The Things They Left Behind. So we watched that, and it was really a good, poignant story. And Chaz didn't have the lead part, but he was one of the people who was working in the office, and he had what I would say is a substantial part because he had to show off like the complete gamut of emotions from despair to fear to joy to frustration. And I thought he did a bang up job, but you can watch this free on Vimeo, and it's sort of a ghost story, sort of, but it's very poignant. So that was I'd never even heard of that till he mentioned it to me. I was glad I saw it. But then we watched another movie that I probably liked better than Alan or Mike, which is Falling Stars, which is, I thought, fabulous, interesting world building, changing, like, it was like one of the most unusual witch movies I've ever seen. Have you seen it, Pete?
I've seen it.
No,
It is
No, I
not
haven't
long.
seen it.
It's like an 80-minute movie, which is, in my view, about perfect length. And basically, you think it's just, it takes a while for you to like clue into what is going on, but they talk about they're in the harvest season. But what they mean by that is the witches are harvesting people.
Hmm.
It's not like that, like, oh, the farmers are getting the harvest in. And I thought it was a really very well done script. They had a side story with a radio station DJ, which didn't quite work as well as the rest of it, but I thought the main story was substantial and very interesting. In fact, you could even think of this, Mike, as a cosmic horror movie. It would not be out of place on the easy list, I don't think.
Okay. Alan, have you seen it? I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've seen it. It takes a while when you're watching it, like Matt just said that you like if you look at the promotional material, like the poster, and I avoided the what do you call it, the trailer for it. You don't know it's a movie about witches. Witches. So when I went into it, it's like they're letting little bits of information come out as you go along. It took me a while to figure out, like Matt said, what's going on, because there's like people with you can hear in the TV in the background that they're watching, and that's how you just little exposition without being overbearing. And like he said, it's a little bit too ambiguous for me. I like what they did with it. I enjoyed it. And it's not a big budget thing. You know, they had a very small budget, but it's done very well. It's that world. It's pretty creepy. It's like I would compare it to in a little way. Was it When Evil Lurks? I don't know. It's one I told you, Mike, don't, because it's
Oh
body
yeah,
horror and stuff like that.
yeah.
But in that world, possession is a real thing. Like it's not some random thing or that nobody believes it. It's part of everyday life. So in this world, witches are real. They're talking about the Salem witch trials, I think, at one point, and then now harvest season, like Matt says, we're the harvest. So it was pretty cool. It was surprising. I liked it.
I thought the writer, I'd never heard of the writer, Richard Carpala. I thought he did a great script.
I think
and
that was
he
its
felt-
strength.
he also had he also co-directed it.
Well, a couple quick things, Matt. First of all, as always, thank you for running movie night every Saturday night. If you want to get in on movie night, one way you can do it is if you're on Facebook, join the Lovecraft Easing group, not the page, the group, and Matt posts there, you know, the links to the movie and so forth, all the information. I mean, if you're not on Facebook, shoot me an email. I'll forward your information to Matt, lovecrafteasing@gmail.com, if you want to be on movie night. The other thing Alan, Matt said possibly cosmic horror. What did you think? Because you helped me
I
run
think
that
it's
page.
somewhere between science fiction, horror, and folk horror.
Okay.
I think
Like,
yeah,
the-
it could go on the page.
Speaking of folk horror, you all are familiar with Severin Record Company or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones who a few years ago released this 15 CD collection called All the Haunts Be Ours, which is like this kind of really impressive collection of Blu-ray of folk horror movies that are very hard to come by. Well, they have just recently put out a volume 2. Now, volume 1 had 15 discs. This has 13 discs. It's rather pricey. I haven't gotten it yet. I'm thinking about getting it, but if you're interested in folk horror, it's like probably essential that you get this DVD collection.
The Patreon podcasts are every Wednesday now. That's when they drop when they drop. The last one, this previous Wednesday, I interviewed Philip Gillot, who wrote the movie Europa, and been involved with other projects, of course. I know you're a big fan of that movie too,
Oh,
Pete.
Europa, he wrote Europa Report?
Europa Report, I'm sorry, not Europa.
Well, that explains why those short films of his are so good.
Yeah, I was about to say, I interviewed him also about the sci-fi series A Thousand Suns, which is free to watch on YouTube. And it's 6 movie shorts, and I mean, the production values are through the roof. They're amazing. And Philip wrote 3 of those. And one of them, you could say, is kind of a folk horror as well. But guys, check this out. I mean, it's time well spent. It's just a really one of the shorts was actually filmed on a glacier, and the director joked that he learned that, you know, super glue doesn't always stick at 40 degrees below zero, you know.
Nope.
So yeah, it's a really great little series, man. I can't say enough good about it.
I really liked it. It didn't seem to me that they were connected in any way, really, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
They're each of them absorbing.
Yeah. And you know, as always, the very bottom level tier on the Lovecraft Easing Patreon, all of the Patreon podcasts are available to you. So yeah, there's that, and then I don't know, you guys, Matt, Paul, whoever, you guys want to say something about Tony Todd?
Yeah.
Oh, Pete can. I'm I just mentioned his name on the Facebook page because he was in a 2023 short adaptation of Cellophane, the Lovecraft Dreamland story,
Hmm.
which I haven't seen, but I'm gonna try and track it down and show it for movie night.
Yeah. He's in one of your favorite movies, Mike,
Yeah, The Man from Earth.
Man from Earth. He has a literal probably 1 minute shot in 84 Charing Cross Road. He's looking, Corey's like, he is? So in 84 Charing Cross Road, when Anne Bancroft comes into her apartment building and the guy's changing the light bulb, he tells her that the building has asbestos and she's got to move out. And that's Tony Todd.
Huh.
What is that movie? I don't think I've seen it.
84 Charing
Oh
Cross Road is
gosh, it's
a beautiful
beautiful.
love story, and it's not, but it is, between a woman writer in New York who can't get the books she wants and has to buy them from a shop in England over the course of several decades. And she builds up a great friendship with her bookseller, only by letters.
Okay.
It's a very
gonna be
charming,
good.
beautiful movie.
And the germ of a great idea for Pete for a story.
Yes, but let's not talk about that because I'm almost done.
Okay, I want to read it.
What I had a great deal of fun doing is I was at a con and Tony Todd was sitting not signing anything because nobody was there, and he was sitting next to a writer who had just dropped their first novel, Max Brooks.
Was that World War Z?
Yeah. And I said, it must be interesting to be sitting next to Max Brooks. And Tony Todd's like, why? Is it because that's Anne Bancroft's son? And he's like, what? And like, apparently he and Anne Bancroft had a great friendship, and she had given him lots of pointers on starting a film career. And he had no idea that Max Brooks was her daughter or her son. So
That's pretty
I
cool.
introduced the two of them.
Nice.
So yeah. Anyway,
And I guess if you're a horror fan, you know his big role was Candyman.
Hmm.
no, it was Worf's brother.
He was also in that.
But he was in that episode in Next Generation, the Klingon officer who comes over and does all those.
He's in a few.
inspections.
Yeah, that was Worf's brother.
Wow.
Kerplop.
He was also
Um,
in the. What's the other Star Trek series? I'm drawing a blank.
Voyager.
No, the other one.
Next
Just-
Generation.
No,
Discovery,
no.
Strange New Worlds.
PS9.
Deep Space Nine.
It's Deep Space Nine. Thank you. He
Oh,
was in
yeah.
one of the best
Not
episodes.
that we're
of that.
nerds. Nobody watching should think that we're nerds.
Yeah, we wouldn't want anyone to think that. Yeah, he was in one of the. He plays the commander's son in a sort of maybe future. You remember that?
Oh yeah, you're right.
The
Yeah,
Cap-
actually, I do remember that episode.
That's a really good episode.
He also starred as Ben in the remake of Night of the
Night of the
Living
Living
Dead.
Dead. He was in Platoon. I forget that.
Yeah,
The second role. I'm looking at his IMDb. He had over 245 roles.
yeah.
Wow, holy moly!
He was a working man's actor.
Did a lot of different
He
DC
was.
voices.
Yeah, he was Darkseid.
Like sad.
It's got that makes sense. The voice.
Where
he did some
where
Lego
was he?
stuff.
When was he Darkseid?
I think in the Lego
Justice League
movie.
Dark.
Justice League Dark. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got the voice for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, you
He
think
was
like
on Voyager.
he actually had a very long filmography.
Yeah,
He
Near-
is constantly working.
He was, I think, in most of the Star Trek series. You know, in at least one episode. And there's a Pete, if you remember, near the end of The Man from Earth, which I won't
yeah.
spoil for anyone who hasn't seen it, because it's my favorite movie. You should go watch it right now. You should stop listening to me and go watch it right now. But near the end of the movie, you know, after everything that's happened, he goes, I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch Star Trek for a little bit of normalcy or something to that effect. So,
Yeah.
He was
uh,
in Babylon 5 too, man. He's all
Oh,
over the
yeah.
place. Smallville, Angel.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was an angel. He was small. Yep.
I may have to rewatch Babylon 5. It's been so
Yeah.
long.
There's this running joke that Jeffrey Combs is like in everything. Like he's played the
He
most.
is.
I think he's supposed to be supposedly holds the record for playing the most Star Trek characters.
He's in like every series except the original and maybe Next Generation.
Well, no, he was in the original as a baby.
Are you kidding me?
He was.
No, yes, I am kidding.
Fuck.
I was about to say, well, somebody's got to be the baby.
I know
Yeah,
Ron Howard's brother was there.
Yeah,
as a
Ron
kid,
Howard's
but-
brother, Clint.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, Tony Todd was just everywhere. But yeah, anyway, yeah, he passed away. I was sad when it happened, when I heard about it.
Yeah.
He was
It wasn't that old.
no,
69, right?
yeah.
All right, Pete, you're going to be familiar with this, and I think some of the rest of you are. F. Paul Wilson's Secret History of the World.
Yeah.
So for some reason I was thinking about Paul the other night, and I pulled up that Secret History of the World page on his website.
It's been a while since I've looked at it, but yeah.
Yeah, repairmanjack.com is his website. Secret History of the World is basically, if someone can explain this better than me, just interrupt me. But the repairman, I wish Mark was here. Mark Rainey was here because he loves this series. But the Repairman Jack series is just part of his overall story arc. Wouldn't you say, Pete?
Yes, which starts off with a very rare story, hard to find in heroic fantasy. But yeah, go ahead.
Demon Song?
Is that what it's called? Where he lays out
the prehistory one, or the Compendium of Surem?
the prehistory one.
Yeah, you can read that for free online, actually. But and of course, the novel, the fantastic novel, The Keep, is part of this story arc. But on his page on his website, The Secret History of the World, he lays out the entire arc in chronological order. You know, like he starts with the past, you know, prehistory, and then Compendium of Surem is 1498, you know, and so on and so forth. Of course, The Keep is 1941. And I thought, and then I looked at, I picked up Wardenclyffe on Kindle, which that happens 1903 to 1906. And I am really, really enjoying it. So I'm trying to kind of go through the Secret History of the World because I've been in that kind of mood. And this one, Nikola Tesla's in this one. Have you read this one, Pete?
A long time, a while ago, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. You know, it basically he's good at taking real world historical events and incorporating them into his universe. And he does the same thing with Nikola Tesla here. And then talks about, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but new evidence has surfaced that a shadowy fraternal order stepped in and provided generous funding after J.P. Morgan reneged. Witnesses state that the testing of the tower continued, but only on foggy days when the discharges would not be noticed. The final test took place on April 18, 1906. Around dawn, in heavy fog, the tower was charged to maximum capacity. Across the Atlantic, in Wales, 2 copper prongs attached to a 50-watt light bulb were thrust into the ground. The bulb lit. And then it talks about why anyway, it's really good so far. So I thought I'd mention The Secret History of the World to you know, anyone who may not be familiar with it. It's a really fascinating story arc. So
there is a Kickstarter that's going on that people might be interested in. Helios House is a high-end boutique publisher that is currently being used very frequently by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, like for their Miskatonic Missives and their Two Hearts That Beat as One. A gentleman from Angel Street, which is like Siametti's wife's history of Lovecraft. Well, they've got a Kickstarter going on for a very high quality version of the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. With in particular, it's got what you might call as psychedelic or surreal art by a guy called Mark Ferlati. He's an Italian artist. So it's well worth backing. It's not terribly expensive if you want to get in on it. I think it's going to be a real high quality book. You can find it on Kickstarter.
On Bloody Disgusting, they mentioned 5 noir horror movies to stream this week because it's, wait for it, Noir-vember.
Oh, cool.
See what they did there? Angel Heart. What a great movie. I'm due for a
Meh.
rewatch. You don't like Angel Heart?
No, I do. Just in retrospect, I don't know that it stands up.
I don't know. I watched it on movie night like 2 or 3 years ago, and I hadn't seen it in 20 plus years. I think it held up very well.
Is it? Okay.
What do
Well,
you prefer, Angel Heart or Empty Man?
Angel Heart or what?
Because
Empty
Empty
Man.
Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because
it's
they
kind of-
both.
They're very different. I can see where you're drawing a comparison, but the movies are just different.
Yeah.
The Empty Man is a
But there
really
was-
great.
I really like The Empty Man. I think that's fabulous
Yeah.
cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Corey, you can disagree with him if you want. It's fine. Corey still here?
He's still here.
Oh, there he is. He's muted. That's
Muted.
Angel Heart cast a deadly spell. Is that noir? It's trying to be noir.
Only in the sense
Red
that it's a
Ward.
detective show.
Yeah.
People
Diablo.
wear fedoras.
Sorry.
People wear fedoras. That makes it more.
Right. Diabolique. And
That's one from like 1960, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not seen. Oh, they mentioned Lord of Illusions. How is that noir?
Well, he is a detective.
Whatever.
Yeah, but
I have not seen this in a really long time. The Night of the Hunter.
ooh,
Oh yeah.
that's a great movie.
Is that the Robert Mitchum one?
Yeah.
Yeah, part
The only
noir.
movie.
Huh?
It's the only movie Charles Lawton ever directed. One and done.
Really?
Yeah.
Part noir, part gothic fairy tale, part horror. The Night of the Hunter is a melting pot of genres. I know what I'm doing after the show. I'm gonna turn off my brain and watch The Night of the Hunter. I haven't seen that in so long.
Yeah, me too.
That would be a good movie night, wouldn't it, Matt?
I'll
Yeah.
put it on the list.
Yeah.
I just put The Haunting on the list.
All right. What
Oh,
else is on that
love that
list?
movie.
Because I know that there's got to be one that you're not even mentioning yet.
Me?
Yeah.
No, that's it.
That's it?
That's their list, not mine. I hasten to add.
Dark City.
Oh, yes.
If you're looking for
That is so.
dark sci-fi noir.
That's about as noir as it gets, in my view.
Yeah. Somewhere in there is also Blade Runner.
Hmm.
But I
I
mean,
would
Blade
put at
Runner.
least 2
literally-
Lynch movies also.
Yeah, David Lynch, Blue Velvet.
Mulholland Falls.
Hmm.
That was a great movie.
And
Yeah.
Lost Highway.
Chinatown.
Hmm.
That's about as more as it gets.
Hmm.
It's such a happy ending.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. So uplifting at the end.
Human
It's
horror.
Chinatown.
What'd you think of the two Jakes?
I wish they hadn't. It's okay. Look, it's The Two Jakes is an okay film. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not as good as Chinatown.
No.
And
Kim, I knew I liked you. I knew I liked you, ma'am. She just reminded me on the side chat, has the 13th floor been mentioned yet? I
you,
love that freaking movie.
yeah, you do.
You're sick
Yeah.
of hearing me say how much I love that movie. You've had to listen to how much I love that movie for a decade. You know? You're
Yeah.
welcome, Pete. You're welcome.
Both of our viewers probably like it too.
We have more than the 13th floor came out the same year as The Matrix. They both are, about virtual reality, and the 13th floor doesn't matter. So
But no kung fu.
that's
And
no bullet time.
Yeah.
No
Blade
bullet.
did bullet time before the Matrix, by the way. There you go.
And guys, if you get nothing else from today's episode, I hope you remember that.
There it
It's
is.
important.
What was the movie about the cops who had to take pills so they had no emotions and they did
Equilibrium
Equilibrium?
with
Oh, yeah,
Christian Bale and
Christian Bale before he
somebody
got
else.
famous.
Yeah, they did what they called gun kata, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like watching that Kurt Thomas movie, Jim Cotta. It's almost as good.
Yeah.
Jim Codd is on a whole
Alright.
different level. It's so bad, I love it.
Well, it's like the agent running down the alleyway being chased, and look, there's a high bar 10 feet off the ground.
And a pommel horse.
What could
Who
he
would have
do?
thought? With the mullet, he's unfortunately he's no longer alive, so there's no hope of Jim Cotta too.
Kurt Thomas died?
Yeah, Kurt Thomas died
Wow.
during one of my rabbit hole sessions of Jim Cotta trivia. I unfortunately found that out.
DeBronzo, I would invite you to my useless trivia team,
Oh,
but I actually
I
think
would-
your knowledge is actually completely and utterly useless. It's so obscure that not even trivia people care.
Wow.
That's why I'd want to be that one guy in the room. What are we gonna do with that? Like, I don't know, but there it is.
So I will tell you that I was at horror trivia a couple weeks ago, and Lamageddon was the answer.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Oh no, you're kidding me.
And who prepared you for that?
It
Who
was
prepared
you.
you for that?
It's
Damn
your
right.
fault.
Well, you owe him a debt that you can never repay, Pete.
That's right.
Ever.
Shit, you should have never told me that.
Yeah, it's
hanging
gonna go.
over
It's
your
gonna
head
go to his
forever.
head, really.
He described his movie, and everybody at my table is just looking like we have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
It's
And I put
what if
my head down on
Superman
the-
was a llama? You
I
know,
put my head down on the table. It's like, I know the answer.
And you did. I bet there was that 1
I have
second.
no
I
life.
don't want to admit. I don't want to admit
I
that I
didn't
know
want
the
to
answer.
admit that I knew the answer.
Yeah. Huh?
oh my
The
God.
bonus question was Velocipaster, right?
No, it wasn't.
We still have to watch Miami Connection together.
Yeah, if we have to.
Corey, you
Oh,
kind of
we
have this
have
look on
to.
your face, like, what have I done to myself by staying?
All the recommendations here are top shelf.
So
Wait a minute. No, he listens to the show. He knew what to expect.
Corey,
Yeah,
you talked
yeah.
about the books that you know are hot trash. Those are the movies that DeBronzo and I watch rabid.
Oh
I feel
no.
like I saw like a trailer for Lamageddon at some point. Either that or I heard you guys talking about it on the show. But one thing I
Oh,
should
we
say,
talk-
like I'm so far behind on watching movies. Like everything you've mentioned tonight, I have not seen. I haven't
You
seen
should
any
put
of
that at the
No,
top of
you
your
should
list,
never-
Llamageddon.
No.
The people that made that want to do Alpacalypse. That is a fact. They're
Yes.
either doing it or they want to do it.
Pete,
Well,
you know, a
it's
while
nice to
back they
work
said they
in.
did want to come on the show, and I changed my mind. The
So
Llamageddon
maybe
creators.
I guess what we really need to work on, we got to be very forward thinking. Is like, what are we going to use for a vicuña?
Oh, we're forward thinking here. Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Like, what
Matt.
word can we come up with?
All right, I'll work on it.
Okay.
What have you done? Jakester on the side chat just wrote, I looked up Llamageddon.
Yeah, it's in your browser history now.
Yeah, you're
Sorry.
stuck. Yeah.
Bronzo, there's a new release on Shudder. I'm sure you've seen it. Ninja
What is it?
versus Shark.
I've
Ninja
seen
versus
it. I
Shark.
haven't seen the movie yet, but I saw it. I'm like, I almost said to Matt,
You know
"There's
what
a
we
shark
should,
in it."
you know what we should do, guys? We should go door to door and knock on the door, and when people answer, say, have you heard the good news about Llamageddon? And just spread the word.
I'm right behind you, Mike. I'll be right up there.
Mhm.
Just-
Jakester says Ninja versus what?
Shark.
Shark.
Oh my God.
Sharks? Really?
So I have to tell you guys this story because I was just stunned. The reason I was going to be late tonight is because my daughter was at the Model UN in Orlando for the last 3 days.
Okay.
Their crisis situation at Model UN was an
Armageddon?
an SCP escape from one of the containment facilities.
Like what just happened in South Carolina.
Yeah, except for things like the Shy Guy and the Rizzler. And their whole mission was to try to contain all these SCPs that got loose.
So have they gotten all the monkeys back from South Carolina?
No.
They
Did
could,
anybody try to-
they could actually like get loose and breed, you know?
Yeah, like we have monkeys in Florida in like 4 locations.
I know one is like on the Crystal River, right? Where you would
Yeah.
film Tarzan flicks. There's a whole island full of monkeys now.
Yeah. Yep.
And every other species that doesn't belong there. You're like the lost world down there. You got pythons and all types of shit.
Yeah.
All right. So there.
Gamb-
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Gambian pocket rats.
I do have a question. Was one of there? Did anybody triangle choke a shark while they were there?
What?
What?
I guess that's a no, because triangle choke a shark, you know. Just like we just talked about sharks and ninjas, so I figured maybe
Let's
you're
see.
leading into something. There was a connection.
Bucket.
There's not, is there?
Bucket
Yeah.
list. Bucket list.
Disappointing. Great story.
Hang on. I'm adding to my bucket list. Triangle choke. Shark. Okay, got it.
If
You
I
know
get
that
away with it,
sharks
I do it.
don't have lungs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. They have cartilage. Snap that shit. Like a pencil.
Wow.
Well,
Okay.
you
I don't-
can
I have
you
to get
can
out
run
myself.
anytime you want.
Yeah.
I don't feel sorry for him. He knew what he's getting into.
He bought his ticket. He knew what he was going to do. I say, let him die.
All right. I have not seen any of these 5 horror movies that dropped the other day on streaming, but in a rare perfect storm, they all look interesting to me. Heretic. Have you guys seen the trailer for this? It's
I am told that it is an excellent movie that I should not watch.
yeah, I'm wondering.
It's with Hugh Grant, right?
Hugh
Yeah.
Grant, yeah.
And it's okay.
2 young missionaries, spreading the word of Llamageddon, are forced to prove their faith when they knock on the wrong door and are greeted by Mr. Reed, becoming ensnared in his deadly game of cat and mouse. One thing that critics agreed on, Hugh Grant shines as the devious Mr. Reed by
He's
the
making
writers of
latter-
A Quiet
making-
Place.
latter career move to being the bad guy in movies, and he seems to be really liking it.
The Gentleman and Dungeons and Dragons. And that's 3 right there.
What are your other movies?
All right. Black Cab, a supernatural horror
Oh,
movie starring Nick Frost. What, Alan?
I saw that on Shudder.
How was it?
Was it good?
It was
Long
All right.
pause.
Crossing it
Glad to
off.
know.
Okay.
Moving
Moving on. Moving on. That was quick.
Survey says.
just pass on
All
it.
right. Elevation. Anthony Mackie, Marina Baccarin. I never know how to say her name.
She was in Deadpool. Deadpool's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right.
She was in,
Firefly.
yeah, Firefly is what I was going to mention.
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
in Firefly. Star in Elevation, which I'm quoting from Bloody Disgusting, which looks to be another A Quiet Place type movie that also calls to mind this year's Arcadian, which I have also not seen. That's the Nick Cage one, right? Anyone-
Yes.
Yeah.
anyone's seen that one?
Arcadian is interesting,
Crossing Arcadian off.
but it has some interesting special effects.
All right. In the new monster movie, a single father, Anthony Mackie, and two women venture from the safety of their homes to face monstrous creatures to save the life of a young boy. Here's the official synopsis. The world has changed. The only habitable place left for humanity is in the high mountains above 8,000 feet. Go below 8,000 feet. This sounds like an interesting premise. And waiting for you are the very creatures that killed 95% of the human population less than 3 years ago. The creatures known as Lamageddon. But what happens if, to save the life of his young son, a father is forced to do just that, to venture below, quote, the line with two others? And so that's the movie. Sounds interesting. Anthony Mackie's usually in pretty good stuff, right?
He's entertaining.
Yeah. All right. What else you got?
Okay, two more. Meanwhile on Earth. I can always tell when Pete has to go because he's like, all right, move it along, Mike. Meanwhile on Earth is the name of the movie. Elsa, along with her family, is struggling following the disappearance of her brother Frank, an astronaut who vanished during his first mission. Stargazing one night, Elsa is shocked to receive contact from Frank, but her joy is short-lived when she learns of the dark and troubling forces behind Frank's reappearance, forcing her to confront the lengths she will go for the brother she once feared was gone forever. Ever.
Does she want to build a snowman?
That's the sequel. You're mixed up. That's the sequel.
Okay.
Last but not least, maybe, is a movie called Drive Back.
The sequel to Drive There.
Yeah, there's no
No,
synopsis.
it's there. It's a sequel to There and Back Again.
Or would that be Drive Through?
Well, yeah, I think it's probably more accurate to say
Is this part
when
of
this
Fast and
when this
Furious
baby
system?
when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
It's hot.
Drive Back. A couple returning from their engagement party must escape a sinister and seemingly endless road. That sounds interesting, actually. That might be my kind of movie. All right, that's what they are. Let's see, what else do I got? I think that's it. Oh, Bridget just released another episode of The Weird Library. And speaking of our friend Chaz Mina, he wrote this one,
Cool.
Nice.
read by Anthony Pierce, who's a very good narrator. And
Yes.
oh, and last but not least, I'm glad you're here, Mike DeBronzo. I wouldn't want you to miss this.
He has to say that, Mike.
It's contractual.
I've had Zombie Batman for a while. In the mail, I received Zombie Superman the other day, thanks to Kelly Young. And yeah, he
You
hand
really need to get-
painted these.
Yeah, we got to get Kelly a better hobby.
No, not until he not until he
I have
sends
Zombie
me.
Astronaut.
No, I'm speaking. Not until we. Not until I get Zombie Wonder Woman. Then he can quit. After that. Anyway, go on.
Oh.
DeBronzo, did you have something?
I had the zombie astronaut you sent me. I also have
Almost as
A
cool,
certain
I'll
number-
grant you.
a certain number one that you'll never have either.
That's fine.
So-
It doesn't bother me.
Up up and away.
Does not bother me at all.
It bothers me.
Oh, I gotta wait. Hold on.
Oh,
You guys talk about
Quick, let's sign off.
Talk amongst yourselves.
I actually have to go.
All right. Have a good one. Oh, Cosmos, by Carl Sagan. One of the best science books ever written, is only $1.99 on Kindle today.
oh,
So buy it, read it. It'll change your life.
yeah, centerfold back there, but
Yeah.
So, Mike,
What are we doing here?
It's his Lego set.
Miami Book Fair is coming up,
All right.
and
Which mic are you talking to?
you,
Oh, okay.
and one of the guests is Brian Michael Bendis,
All right.
who
oh, shit.
many decades ago did the art for Cthulhu, the Miskatonic Project.
Okay.
So I'm going to go see him and get that signed. But meanwhile, Brian Bendis is a huge is a huge writer for DC. So I went up to one of my local comic book shops and dove through their old promo posters, and I pulled some stuff, including this.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get this signed in 2 weeks.
And then what's the next step? You're going to frame it and send it to me, or do I need to frame it myself?
Well, I figured I would send it to you.
Oh, I was just kidding. Are you serious?
Yeah, I
You are-
figured I would send it to
You are such a
I also
good.
got one for the Legion of Superheroes and for his one of his Jinx World titles.
I don't care what Matt says. You're a really good guy.
No, I'm not.
Well, all right. So
But you don't have to tell him that the Miskatonic Project was a sucky book.
First of all, I liked it, but anyway.
thank you,
Um,
Pete. That's very
welcome.
nice of you,
Hey,
buddy.
can I ask you a question,
Mhm.
Mike? What's the weather like where you're at?
It's been getting down at night to
'Cause
40s and 50s, depending on, and getting up to about 70 to 75, depending on the day.
because the reason I
Why?
have to ask you is that my wife is currently stuck in Dallas.
Really? Well, I'm
Yeah.
about half an hour from her then. Why is she
I
stuck?
know. Weather and plane part problems. So,
Weather.
well, she's trying to make
What-
it back home, and that's usually like lots of plane. Even though Raphael never made landfall anywhere, it's still causing problems for flights.
I was going to say it can't be the weather here.
No, I think it's the weather between here and there.
Okay.
So
Well, if she needs anything, I'm
I
happy
think she's okay, but I was just wondering.
if she needs a place to stay or anything like that, I'm happy to go
Oh
get her.
no, she was at a Points and Miles conference, and so she should be able to handle all of her own hotel arrangements.
I don't know what any of that means, but that's okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't understand it completely either, but apparently it allows her to fly and stay for free.
Oh, no, she
So,
doesn't need me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope she gets home soon. And guys, please pick up Living in Cemeteries by our guest here. Thanks for being here, Corey.
It's Corey Feldman, right?
Corey Feldman, yes, with an F.
Actually, oh my God, I can't. I just realized you're too young, but you don't even know who Corey Haim was, do you?
Oh my
Wasn't
God.
one of the two Corys, right?
Yeah.
I know there were two Corys. I know that they had not a great time in life. Yeah.
Well, we all thought Corey Feldman was going to die.
Yeah, Stand by Me.
Yes.
Aha! I know one thing.
We all
Yeah,
thought
well,
Corey
just
Feldman,
listen up because Pete's about to drop some knowledge.
We all thought Corey Feldman was going to die.
Hmm.
Corey Haim, the clean-cut, young, good-looking, he was the one who, took the early exit. Meanwhile, Corey Feldman is just like going off the deep end, right, Alan?
On stage.
Still
Yeah, on
alive, though.
stage in front of everybody.
There's video to accompany
What?
accompany that statement.
Do I dare?
Maybe
Yeah,
Corey
it's just-
Feldman had better ancestors.
Do I dare
Yeah.
ask what happened on
I
stage?
clicked on one short on Instagram, and they just kept coming up. coming up,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, Jesus,
Wow.
stop.
All right, I'm gonna look this up later.
No, don't
Yeah.
do it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no. You should definitely check it out. It's
I
context.
trust Pete on this one.
Don't do it. It's a train wreck that you will not be able to look away from.
You'll
Corey
enjoy
Haim,
yourself.
his friend Corey Haim was in one of my favorite horror movies, Silver Bullet.
Yeah.
So,
And we just rewatched The Burbs the other night.
I love the Burbs. That's Feldman.
That's Feldman.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, all right, everybody. Corey, thanks for being here. Everyone, thanks for listening. Special thanks to the patrons, and thanks to you guys for being here and putting up with me today. And we'll see everybody next time.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Goodbye and hello.